In one of my recent videos, I had mentioned toxic positivity and how I had found myself guilty of that, especially as a teacher, certainly as a parent, where you're just kind of cheerleading people on even when things are bad. And, whether it's a personal loss or the state of the world or a failure or a rejection or something that feels bad, I can totally see and have experienced it myself when you get this kind of toxic positivity back that erases those feelings or minimizes them as if they don't matter. That feels even worse. It feels bad. It's not helpful. So I don't mean to contradict myself, but at the same time, I've also been thinking about how I have actively tried to stay positive in my own career in the face of these rejections and personal hardships and failures and things not going my way, which I do think is necessary in order to withstand this industry and to continue to build and create a career and have an eye on the long game. Because the short-term wins are great and they do help build towards something, but you will face far more rejection in this industry. Most of us will. And one of the things that I frame it as is to look at things as a choice. And again, this can apply to personal things as well as professional. It is different. It is a different mindset to actively choose something, even if it is not something that you want. Say, I have a friend who would really love to move to Los Angeles or to New York to kind of build their career. And so, but for a number of totally valid reasons, that is unlikely, at least right now. And who knows about the near future, but, right now that's just not a possibility. And trying to kind of cheerlead about like, well, you can do it and chase your dreams and all that stuff is just not helpful. And at a certain point, it's disrespectful. At the same time, I can see that lack of choice kind of eating away in terms of like, well, if only I had this, or if only I had that, or if things were different, then maybe I could. And even if it is just a mental game, so much of this is a mental game. And I mentioned that in a previous video as well, where it is very different to choose to remain where you are and to choose not to move to Los Angeles, not to move to New York, and to pursue what you can where you are with the resources that you have, then to kind of feel like that choice was never yours or taken away from you or something. And so it's really just about flipping perspective. And again, this was something that I personally faced, especially coming out of my divorce, where I was trying to move back to Los Angeles and I was trying to kind of be like, well, now's my time to build my career. And I felt like I'd kind of moved away from LA, not really by choice, was in cities that I didn't necessarily like at first and had a hard time connecting with my community, and I just didn't quite know what I was doing. And but by the time I was looking at moving back to LA, I had 2 young kids, and that really shaped a different reality for me moving back to Los Angeles, trying to find work probably at the assistant level. Would I be able to do my own projects? Would I even be able to afford Los Angeles as a single mom with 2 kids? I didn't have childcare baked in there. I didn't have friends and family that could fill that role. I would have to hire a nanny. Childcare, services don't exist past 6 p.m. And then with the commute and living and all that stuff, weekend reads and schmoozing and all this stuff, it just was something that, from a realistic standpoint, if I had pushed through and kind of fought to chase my dream, I could have ended up in a really terrible position and put my children in a really terrible position. And I had a friend who was a single mom in Los Angeles in the industry who I reached out to for guidance, thinking that she would give me these tools and this cheerleading and you can do it and push through and all this stuff. And she was like, don't do it. This is a terrible idea. Um, and it was really hard to hear that. And I'm grateful that, she gave me some honest truth there. And I, and from that point on, I started looking at Houston as a choice. I had definitely felt when I had gotten here, I was a Hurricane Katrina evacuee. I certainly didn't come here by choice. I had two kids, which were by choice, but, being a young parent and a new parent, there are things that you don't expect to happen that you never could have anticipated, things like that. I didn't choose to get divorced. There were just all these things where, for lack of a better term, there's a kind of a victim mentality. And I do think that there are ways to reframe it. And once I did, I even went out to Los Angeles and had a week of meetings and looking at schools and trying to find apartments and thinking about things where that reality of kind of, these are the circumstances that I'm living with. How do I choose them and kind of actively engage in a way that will be fulfilling? And that is kind of the road that I've been doing for the last 15 years. And so I think choice and finding a way to find agency, even in the things that aren't positive, is a really good way to preserve your mental health, maintain some kind of positivity in your own life, and keep kind of moving forward. And if you look at it as a choice, again, this is a hard industry. At some point, you may choose to say this is enough. I've done enough. I've been here. I've put in enough time. I'm done. And so I think the power of choice, even just from a mental state, is a really important place to be in this industry.